Welcome back. This video could be very short. And if you're in a rush, let me get you the bottom line up front. And let me tell you that this lens is just spectacular. This is probably the best Fujifilm lens, for the X mount at least, that I've ever used. Even better than the 200mm f2, which I reviewed very highly. You can find the video over here. It's not perfect. I found just a small quirk, which is weird, but we're going to talk about that later. But other than that, this lens is just spectacular. That's it. If you're on a rush, you can go, you can leave now. I'll see you in the next one. That's just about it. However, if you're more interested in a little bit more details and a little bit more conversation about this lens, stay with me because I believe it's going to be worth it, especially because I'm going to show you a lot of pictures. We're going to discuss about the usability of the lens, its advantages over other lenses, and stuff like that. Now, before getting into the review of the lens, let me get you a couple of disclaimers. Fujifilm Italia sent me this lens to review, but I don't get to keep it. And actually, I had already sent the lens back. That's why you don't see it in my hands right now. And I didn't receive any money to say anything specifically. I was only sent the lens to just test out and review. This video, however, has a sponsor, and that sponsor is Audio with two I's. My go-to platform when it comes to music and sound effects. Now, Audio is probably the best that you can find around because it's easy to use, it gets updated constantly, and it provides very high quality content on a daily basis. It gets updated on a daily basis, and I love the content that they have. Finding them, it's easy. Once you start using it, the platform starts knowing you better and provides you with suggestions on what you may like, what you may need in your production, and that's why I definitely love it. Again, it's my go-to platform for everything that is personal, YouTube, work stuff. I go to them all the time, and I'm super happy with it. In Audio, in order to help you find out how good they are, they decided to share a 70% discount code for you that is going to get you, again, 70% discount on your annual subscription, which is going to make super easy for you to test their contents out and decide for yourself. Now, enough with that. Let's just start talking about the lens. This lens is built exceptionally well, and despite its focal length and its aperture, because it's a 500mm f5.6, it's very compact, and it's exceptionally lightweight. It's 1.3 kilos, 1.3 something, okay? Basically less than 3 pounds. And from a usability standpoint, you're going to see that it's super easy to use. When it comes to the features that the lens has, on the side, near to the mount of the camera, you're going to find a focusing limiting switch, which you come to expect with lenses like this. You find a welcome comeback, which is the stabilization on and off button, which I've been requesting Fujifilm to do, to bring back in their lenses since they launched probably the 16 to 80. I've been complaining that they don't have that switch on the body. It's finally back in this one. Let's hope this is a new standard for all the stabilized lenses that they will launch in the future. And it's also got another switch that allows you to determine how you're going to be using the functions buttons that you find on the front of the lens. I personally use those to assign to basically bring the focus back to the minimum focusing distance, which means that if the lens focuses on the background, sometimes the subject on the foreground is so blurred that it's got hard time finding the subject. Well, once you push that button, it brings it back to almost the minimum focusing distance. It sees the subject and it focuses again. That I found it's a super easy way of using those functions, and it's super clutch when you're on a rush and trying to focus on something. So that's my personal way of setting the lens. You can choose yours. Going on with the features of this lens on the body, this lens has all the professional Fujifilm lenses has an aperture ring, and this aperture ring is not as loose as it is on the brand new 16 to 55 Mark II, something that I complained about in my review last week. It's a bit more clicky, it's definitely better to use, and more than anything, given the position, it's going to be hard for you to accidentally change the aperture without wanting to do it, because it doesn't get exactly in the way of where you're placing your hand. So you need to want to change the aperture to change it. The aperture ring also has the brand new way, not brand new, it's been there for few years now, of going to the automatic position. You now have to press a button and move it in automatic, so you don't move accidentally from outside of automatic or in automatic mode. It's a clever way of doing it. It's something that I really like. On the front of the lens, you're going to find, aside from the manual focus ring, I haven't tried it. I don't manual focus, honestly, that much. So I don't know if it's a good, it feels good in manual focusing. I don't think you're going to be using manual focus that much anyways. But anyways, it's there if you want to use it. It's there. You also find the hood, which is big. It's got a big Fujifilm writing on the side so that people will know that you're shooting on Fujifilm. And it's also got a clever way of detaching it from the body of the lens, from the barrel of the lens, which is a button. You need to click a button and then it releases from the mount. Way better than what you can find on the 200mm f2, which is that screw-in type of thing, which I hated, and that's why I never used it basically on the 200mm f2. Last but not least, you also find the collar, the tripod collar mount, which is already Arca Swiss compatible, something that all the manufacturers should do. It should be a standard, and thanks Fujifilm for doing this and being probably the only one that does it on all their lenses that comes with collars. It should be like that all the time. Other manufacturers, if you're listening, learn from Fujifilm. It's really important to get us something like that. And aside from technical specifications, which you can read pretty much everywhere, using this lens is a breeze. It's lightweight, it's compact, especially if you remove the hood. It's super easy to handle. It's super easy to, like on an XH2, you don't need the battery grip to balance the entire setup. You don't need it at all. If you want to use it, by all means do it. But even with the bare body, like the way I use it, it balances really well. You can use it the whole day without feeling your arms under any excess of weight, under any strain. And also what I found is that even on an XT50, which is a small body with a small grip, I could definitely use it without being too much concerned about how I was gripping the camera. So really nice lens for everyday wildlife photography, because it's easy to carry, it's easy to handle, it doesn't wear you down, and it gets you, you're gonna see that incredible result. The only thing that I found, this lens is compatible with teleconverters, and I have the 1.4. However, what I found is basically it's impossible to use this lens with the teleconverter because it hunts all the time, especially in autofocus, and especially when you activate the pre-focus, it hunts like crazy. Once you deactivate the pre-focus, it's a little bit better, but still, I wouldn't say it's usable. And so I believe it's just a matter of a firmware update, because it shouldn't behave like that. And I already communicate that to Fujifilm. Although I also need to mention that the lens is very long. We're going to get to that in the conclusion. It's very long and you may not need to use a teleconverter. In any case, it shouldn't be doing like that with the teleconverters. All in all, from a construction standpoint, aside from the quirk, which I believe is a firmware thing, to me it's a 10 out of 10 because of the usability, because of the way it's built, because of the fact that nothing is left to be desired. Of course, it's weather sealed. It goes without saying with lenses like this. Compared to the 150-600, it's smaller and lighter, although the front element is a little bit bigger, but that's a function of the bigger aperture and the fact that it's a more professional lens, if you want. And they're both very easy to use. This one is easier. The image quality department of this review is the easiest one. This lens is just spectacular. I couldn't find any flaw in the way this lens does. It's super sharp. It doesn't get any chromatic aberration, like at all. I didn't see a glimpse of chromatic aberration. The bokeh is really nice. And it's basically, from an image quality standpoint, it's a perfect lens. Even on the X-T50, so even on the 40 megapixel sensor, the X-T50 is not your go-to wildlife photography camera. Of course, the X-H2S is way better for that, but the added resolution allows you to crop in. And as you can see from this image, the level of detail that you find in the eye and the feathers, in the body of this osprey that I photographed, this is not a cropped picture. It's like 100% of frame. I didn't crop anything because I wanted to show you what you can get when you frame it perfectly. It requires a little bit of luck, and we're going to get to that, as I mentioned already, because the lens is very long. But from an image quality standpoint, you just don't have to worry about anything. Even when you're focusing very close, it's got no issues. It does incredibly good when it comes to the image quality department. From an autofocus standpoint, this lens is, in my opinion at least, the best autofocusing lens from Fujifilm. It's delivered the most keeper rate. This is, among all the telephoto lenses, this is by far the best. But even in general, in my opinion, this is the best autofocusing lens that you can find. Of course, it's a very long lens, so if you miss, you're gonna see it a lot more, but the keeper rate was very high, and it was capable of following birds coming towards me at a very high speed, flying towards me way better than I could have done with the 70-300 or the 150-600 or even the 100-400. Of course, you don't get 100% keeper rate, but in my opinion, as I always say, the lens is not the bottleneck. It is probably the algorithms and the camera's algorithms that if you miss, it's either your user error or the camera error. The lens is not going to be the bottleneck for the autofocusing system. And again, as I mentioned, this is the best autofocusing lens that you can find in the X-mount system. From a video standpoint, this lens has helped me achieve some of the best bits of footage that I've ever recorded on my cameras. Of course, the image quality, it was great for pictures, it's going to be great for video, but also the autofocusing, for the most part, is very accurate and it sticks to the subject really well. However, sometimes, inexplicably, it drifts when there's no other subjects, or it does really well when there's other subjects that could confuse the camera. That is, again, in my opinion, part of the issue that Fujifilm has with their algorithms, hoping that they're gonna get that fixed at some point. But in general, again, this lens is not the reason why you're gonna miss focus, either in pictures or in video. It's probably the algorithms. Even the focus transitions are very smooth. I was very happy with what I was getting. And again, best telephoto lens that you can get on the Fujifilm X mount. So in conclusion, this is a spectacular lens. Yes, it's not cheap. Coming at $3,000 is definitely not cheap. But mind you, this is a 750 millimeters equivalent F5.6 lens. If you look at what you can find when it comes to 800 millimeters F5.6 around, you're gonna reconsider the concept of expensive for this type of stuff. This lens, if you count the equivalents, comes almost at a bargain price because $3,000 is not that much for a lens of this quality. Now, before wrapping this video up and tied to the the equivalent focal length of this lens is long. It's very long. And as you get better at approaching wildlife and placing yourself in an advantage point when it comes to filming or photographing wildlife, you may end up being too long with this lens, as it happened to me. Sometimes I was too long. I hoped I had a shorter lens, or I hoped I could back up without scaring the wildlife. And so you need to factor that in your purchasing decision. Because for me, this is the best lens that you have when it comes to wildlife photography for Fuji by a huge margin, especially because the 200mm f2, which is a spectacular lens, has the issue that weighs a lot and it's not as easy as this one when it comes to handling. And on the other hand, however, you need to factor in the fact that the lens is very long. And especially if you're doing 4K 120 on the XH2S, which crops in a little bit, 1.3 times basically, 1.29, the lens can become too long at times. And so for me, this shouldn't be your only lens for wildlife, unless you know for sure you're going to be going after very small birds. In that case, yes, this lens is going to help because you need the reach for that type of subjects. But if you're more of a general wildlife photographer or videographer and you're shooting, yes, small birds, but also bigger birds or mammals, bigger animals, then sometimes this lens may be a little bit too long. And then you should pair this lens with a zoom lens. Now, for me, or another lens. Now, for me, the best combo that you can find, it's of course the 200mm f2 with the teleconverter and the 500mm f5.6, because in that case, you have a killer combo that gets you very nice capability when it comes to low light, because you have a 200mm f2 and then you can crop in if you need, and you shoot at f2 and you gain a lot of light, and then you get the reach with the 500mm f5.6. However, I know purchasing both of those means $10,000 worth of investment. You may not have them, and so if you know that you're going to be using the 500mm f5.6 as your main lens and you want to pair it with something shorter, I would not go for the 100 to 400. I would definitely go with the 700, with the 70 to 300, which is a very unsung hero when it comes to wildlife photographer for big birds or mammals. That lens is very, very good, and it would basically get you a very portable, compact, lightweight package that would cover basically anything that you can possibly think of. And on top of that, this shouldn't be your first wildlife photography lens. For us, one reason and one reason only. Finding your subject with a 500mm lens on APS-C, meaning on a 750mm equivalent lens, is hard. If you don't know where to look, if your eyes and your arms and hands are not coordinated enough, you're going to be struggling find the subject. And even if you find it, you're going to be struggling following the subject. It keeps happening to me despite now years of experience with zooms. And so if you buy this as your first lens, you're going to be struggling a lot more than you should. So as your first lens, I would definitely recommend a zoom, either the 150 to 600 or the 100 to 400, those, or the 70 to 300 as well. Those are going to get you a little bit of a better mindset on how to frame, how to look for the subject, how to follow the subject. And it gets you that coordination of eye and hands finding the subject. Once you get used to those, then a lens like this is going to get you that additional push, that additional reach, that additional quality that then in that case is going to definitely improve your photography by a huge, huge margin. So bottom line, this lens is just spectacular. It's just not the lens for everyone. But if you're in Fujifilm and you want to get the best telephoto lens that you can get, look no further. You found your lens. This is it. This is the best lens that you can find. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this is what you were looking for. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, if there's anything that I can help you with, even on a purchasing decision. I like to talk to you guys as much as I can. That's it for today. Ciao, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.